It started like a normal Sunday scroll. Kirk and Rasheeda hadn't posted together in months. Their timelines cold and separate since rumors of another fallout swept Atlanta. Fans had all but given up on seeing them side by side again until tonight. Out of nowhere, a single post appeared on Kirk's verified Instagram, a photo of him and Rasheeda sitting close on a candlelit patio, her hand resting lightly over his. The caption read only one line: "We still won. Always will be." Within minutes, the internet lost its mind. Comment sections exploded. "Ain't no way they back again," one follower wrote. Another said, "They like the hip-hop version of Destiny and Fate. No matter what happens, they circle back." Screenshots spread across fan pages, gossip blogs, and reaction channels faster than wildfire. Even longtime critics couldn't look away. Something about that quiet confidence, the glint of her wedding ring, and his subtle smile hinted that this wasn't just nostalgia. It looked like a declaration, but not everyone believed it. Behind the soft filters and heart emojis, whispers started building. Insiders claimed the photo wasn't recent, that it was taken months ago before the last big fight that supposedly drove Rasheeda out of the Frost household for good. One anonymous source even told an insider that Kirk had been trying to rebuild his image after a string of embarrassing leaks, and that this reunion might be part of a damage control move before the new season drops. Still, none of that mattered to the fans who wanted to believe in Love's comeback story. As the hours passed, the story deepened. Rasheeda went live, her tone calm but firm, thanking fans for still rooting for us. She said, "People grow, people change, and sometimes you realize your heart been in the same place all along." It sounded like closure, but her eyes, a little watery and distant, said there was more behind the camera. Kirk didn't join her live. He just reposted a short clip of their wedding day with a song snippet playing softly in the background. The same song he once used during their vow renewal. By midnight, Atlanta blogs were calling it the Frost thaw, but under that warmth, there was tension somewhere between forgiveness and performance. Friends close to the couple hinted that what fans saw online was just one side of a longer, messier story. And if the whispers were true, that reunion photo might have been taken right after one of the most emotional nights they'd ever had. What really happened before that post? Why did Rasheeda suddenly agree to go public again? And who was the one who said "we still won" first? Fans are convinced this time the Frost love story isn't just about reconciliation, it's about unfinished business, quiet power, and a secret only the two of them know. Under the dim glow of Atlanta's skyline, the Frost house stood quiet, almost too quiet for a Sunday evening. Rasheeda sat at the edge of her bed, scrolling through her phone, replaying the same clip over and over again, the one Kirk had just posted. "We still won. Always will be." The words kept echoing in her head like a song she couldn't turn off. It wasn't that simple, she thought. Not after everything. Not after the tears, the rumors, the endless eyes watching every move they made. But the world had already seen the photo, and the internet was already writing its own story. Outside, the night hummed with the sound of distant cars and flashing cameras. Paparazzi had parked down the street, waiting for any sign of movement. Inside, Kirk paced the hallway, his phone blowing up with messages from producers, friends, and strangers pretending to care. "Bro, y'all trending again?" one message read. Another said, "MTV gonna call tomorrow for a reunion shoot." He smirked for a second, but it didn't last. His mind was somewhere else, back on the conversation they'd had just hours before that post went up. "If we do this, it has to mean something," Rasheeda had said, her tone sharp but tired. "I'm not doing another fake post for likes." Kirk had nodded, eyes low, voice quiet. "I know. I just want us right again." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared at the floor, her hands clenched together, as if holding the weight of 1,000 memories that refused to let go. They'd met years ago when everything felt simpler, before fame twisted their love into something people debated online. Now every smile was questioned, every argument turned into content. Rasheeda missed when love wasn't a performance, when Kirk didn't have to prove anything to anyone. Yet here they were again, sitting across from each other, trying to rebuild what had already been broken in front of millions. After the post went live, Rasheeda's phone rang nonstop. Michelle texted her first, "So y'all back together again, huh? Make sure he mean it this time." Jasmine Washington left a cryptic story with the caption, "History repeats itself," followed by a smirking emoji. Fans took screenshots instantly, flooding comments with theories. Some said Jasmine was bitter. Others said she knew something the rest didn't. Rasheeda ignored it all and kept scrolling. The video clips of her live were already circulating, edited with dramatic music and captions like "Rasheeda finally forgives Kirk." She hated how people simplified years of pain into one viral clip. She closed her phone and stared at her reflection in the vanity mirror. "We still won," she whispered to herself, testing the words, unsure if she believed them yet. Meanwhile, Kirk sat in his car outside Frost Bistro, the place that had once symbolized their teamwork and hustle. He hadn't been back since their last argument inside that very kitchen where she'd thrown a glass just inches from his hand. The restaurant lights were off now, but the memories glowed too bright to ignore. He replayed her voice in his head, that mix of anger and love that always hit the same. "You can't keep asking me to heal and hurt at the same time, Kirk." He exhaled hard, rubbed his face, and checked his messages again. One from Mona Scott popped up short but loaded. "Heard about the post. Call me tomorrow. Let's talk next season." He didn't respond. The last thing he wanted right now was to turn their reconciliation into a storyline. Yet deep down, he knew it already was. Everything they did became a storyline. It was the curse of their fame. Back at home, Rasheeda received a call from her mom. "Baby, I saw that picture," her mother said softly. "You sure this what you want?" Rasheeda didn't answer right away. She looked toward the window where the city lights painted her walls gold. "I don't know, Mama. I just know I'm tired of fighting." Her mom sighed. Love don't fix itself online. It starts in silence. The line went quiet, and for a brief moment, Rasheeda wished the cameras would disappear forever. The next morning, Atlanta woke up to chaos. Blogs plastered the photo across headlines. "The Frosts are back," screamed one. "Rasheeda takes Kirk back again," another claimed. Fan pages dissected everything, the body language, the ring, even the wine glasses in the background. But what none of them knew was that the photo wasn't recent. It had been taken 2 weeks earlier, the night Kirk showed up unannounced at Rasheeda's boutique. It was late, close to closing time, when she saw him through the glass door. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there with a small bouquet of lilies, her favorite. She wanted to send him away, but her hands betrayed her and opened the door. "What are you doing here, Kirk?" she asked, arms crossed. "Just wanted to see you," he replied. "We ain't talked in months." "Whose fault is that?" she snapped. He didn't argue. He just placed the flowers on the counter and said, "I messed up, but I ain't done trying." The conversation that followed stretched for hours. It started with resentment, moved through silence, and ended with tears, neither expected. She didn't forgive him that night, but she didn't tell him to leave either. Something in her broke open when he said, "Rasheeda, I ain't perfect, but I ain't never stopped being yours." When the store lights dimmed, they sat outside on the patio behind the boutique, sipping wine in the dark, talking like two people who used to know each other deeply but got lost somewhere in between. That was when the photo was taken by Kirk, quietly, while she wasn't looking. He'd saved it in his phone, waiting for the right moment to share it. That moment came 2 weeks later, unannounced, without her permission. When Rasheeda found out, she didn't call him, she didn't text, she just went live. The world thought it was a calculated move, a joint statement, but really, it was her way of taking back control. She wanted her voice to be the last one heard, not his. What she didn't expect was the flood of emotion seeing the old photo again would bring. Now, sitting in her room after midnight, she replayed that moment, the night air, his eyes, the way he said her name. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought was gone. Softness. She didn't know if it was love or just nostalgia, but it made her heart ache in a familiar way. Outside, Kirk's car pulled into the driveway. He sat there for a while, unsure if he should go in. He knew she'd seen the post. He knew she was probably angry, but he also knew that sometimes love required risking another bruise. So he got out, walked up the steps, and knocked softly on the door. No cameras, no crew, just him and the sound of his heartbeat. Inside, Rasheeda froze when she heard the knock. She didn't need to look to know who it was. For a few seconds, she stood still, debating whether to open it. Then, slowly, she walked to the door, hand trembling slightly on the handle. When she opened it, their eyes met, tired, familiar. When she opened it, their eyes met, tired, familiar, heavy with history. Neither spoke. The silence said enough. Finally, Kirk whispered, "We still won, right?" Rasheeda didn't answer. She just looked at him, the faintest tear forming at the corner of her eye, and stepped aside to let him in. Kirk didn't sleep. He sat there until the rain softened and the house fell into that deep, humming quiet, the kind that makes every thought sound louder. Somewhere around 3 a.m., he pulled out his phone and opened notes. He started typing an apology he'd never really said out loud, not to the internet, not to producers, not even to himself. It wasn't neat, it wasn't brand safe, and it definitely wasn't built for a press release. It was messy and honest. When he finished, he stared at it for a long time, then locked his phone and finally let his eyes close. Morning came slow. Rasheeda woke to a low clang in the kitchen. The smell of coffee drifted down the hall. She paused at the doorway and watched him from a distance. Kirk in a simple tee, shoulders tired, trying to find the right mug like a guest in his own house. Her chest pinched. She hated that scene tugged at her. She hated that softness still lived underneath her guard. She stepped in, quiet, and reached past him for the sugar. "I got it," she said, voice even. He nodded, moved aside. "Good morning," she answered with a small sound that wasn't yes or no. They sat at the counter, not quite facing each other. Finally, he slid his phone toward her. "I wrote something." She didn't touch it. "To post?" He shook his head. "To say." She blinked once, then picked up the phone. The words were raw. Not "I'm sorry for what you felt." Not "mistakes were made." It was "I did this. I hurt you. I made our house small with my choices. And then, if you tell me to go, I'll go. If you tell me to stay, I'll learn staying every day." She read it through twice, her throat tight. "Why didn't you say this before?" she asked, eyes still on the screen. "I wasn't brave enough," he said. "I wanted to be right more than I wanted to be yours." The silence landed heavy. Her phone buzzed. A DM preview flashed. A blurred photo, a restaurant booth, a man leaning close to a woman. The sender wrote, "Check last week." Her breath stalled. She opened it. The angle was low, like a sneak shot. The man's build was familiar. Her chest went cold. Kirk watched her face change. "What is it?" he asked. She turned the screen. Jaw set. "This you?" His mouth tensed. "One heartbeat." "Two." "No," he said, steady but pale. "That's not last week." She zoomed in. In the background, a framed poster they'd taken down months ago still hung behind the bar. Her memory clicked. That location updated their decor in spring. "When?" she said. "Months back," he answered. "When we were on that 3-day break. I ate with a promoter. Nothing happened." His voice didn't shake. "You sure that's all?" she asked. "I'm not dumb." He lifted his hands. "I know. I also know I can't ask you to trust me from scratch." He took a breath. "Open my phone." She stared at him. He slid the phone. Unlocked. "Passcode's yours. Check whatever you want. I won't move." The room narrowed to a thin thread of air. She didn't want to be the woman digging. She didn't want to reenact 1,000 messy internet scenes. But something in his eyes, the quiet of them, made her pick it up. She scrolled. Messages, DMs, archives, old ugly things that hurt to see. New, careful threads that cut in a different way. No fresh disaster. No smoking gun. The ache of wasted years rose in her throat. "I don't want to live like a detective," she whispered. "I want to live like a wife." His face folded. "Then let me give you a life that don't need searching." A beat passed. "Let me take the weight." He stepped back, hands slightly raised, like approaching a skittish animal. "Look, I called Dr. Brantley," he said. "The counselor you liked. She got a 2 p.m. opening. I already put my card down." Rasheeda's head lifted. He added, "If you don't want it, I'll cancel. But I'm showing up anyway." Her wall cracked. Not with a smile, but with relief. Not a fix. Not a bow on the story. Just a small shift in gravity. "We're not posting about it," she said. "No captions. No hearts. Nothing." "Always," he said, and for once, he meant the word how she needed him to mean it. The internet, meanwhile, did what the internet does. By noon, fan pages were split down the middle. Team Love wins versus Team Performance. One viral thread insisted the reunion pic was staged. Another dragged up old clips, edited with siren sound effects, calling it season promo energy. Michelle went live for 7 minutes, saying half-kind half-cutting things like hearts heal but memory got teeth. Jasmine posted a boomerang of a closed door with the caption "Boundaries." It poured gasoline on time. Fans were shocked. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided in the comments. Cousins and aunties texting group chats like they were on the show too. Just after 1, Carly Red called. "Girl, I'm checking on you," she started, voice full of nosy concern. "You good?" Rasheeda kept her tone cool. "I'm breathing." Carly lowered her voice. Mona sniffing around. "Producers want to do a closure dinner. Private room at Ileana's cameras, but minimal." Rasheeda's eyes hardened. "No." Carly hesitated. "I told M that's sacred, but they think the post means y'all ready." Rasheeda exhaled. "We not props." Behind her, Kirk looked up. She covered the mic and mouthed, "Mona." He shrugged like, "Your call." She returned to Carly. "Tell them we'll do life first. Scenes later. Maybe." Carly said, "Copy. I got you." in a way that meant she'd call back in an hour anyway. 2 p.m. approached like a test. The therapist's office smelled like eucalyptus and quiet rules. Dr. Brantley greeted them with that soft, clinical warmth. "Come in. Sit wherever feels safe." They took opposing corners of the couch. "So," the therapist said gently, "why today?" Kirk's jaw moved. "Because I'm tired of losing my wife in public and in private." Rasheeda's eyes watered. "Because he keeps asking me to be strong in the same places he breaks me." Dr. Brantley nodded. "Good. Both truths can sit here." For 45 minutes, they told the same story from two different maps: childhoods, expectations, the currency of apologies, the tax of fame. There were no sudden miracles, just the steady work of dragging old roots into light. At one point, Dr. Brantley asked, "What's worth protecting more than being right?" Silence. Then Kirk said, "Her," and something in the room tilted. Rasheeda blinked hard, then looked away, as if loving him in front of a witness felt too naked. They left with homework. 3 pages of hard questions. A small chart about conflict styles. A calendar with 2 on the sidewalk. Cameras clicked from a distance. A blogger yelled, "Y'all back or nah?" Kirk kept his head down. Rasheeda didn't flinch. Inside the car, he whispered, "You hungry?" She almost smiled. "Almost, yeah." They didn't go to a hotspot. They rolled up to Frost Bistro with no announcement. The manager's eyes went wide, then soft. In the kitchen, the echoes remembered them. The metal surfaces, the clatter and hiss, the ghosts of old arguments. They sat at a table near the back. The server, a woman who had watched their highs and lows for years, set down to plates like a blessing. "On the house," she murmured, and left. Rasheeda pushed greens around her plate, appetite half there. "Do you ever get scared we only work in memory?" she asked. "Like we're better as a highlight reel than real life." He chewed, swallowed. "I get scared I won't be the man I keep promising I'll be." He met her eyes. "But then I see you and remember, why." As they ate, a kid from the kitchen slipped out, nervous, clutching a napkin. "Ms. Rasheeda, Mr. Frost." She nodded kindly. "I grew up watching y'all," he said. "My parents split when I was 11. It was messy. I used to watch your reruns and think, maybe love don't have to die ugly." His voice wobbled. "I just wanted to say, y'all make people think again." When he retreated, Rasheeda wiped at her eyes with the edge of a smile she couldn't help. "We didn't ask to be anybody's lesson," she said. Kirk's face softened. "We can still be somebody's hope." Mid-meal her phone lit up with a text from her mother. "Don't feed the circus. Feed the marriage." Rasheeda breathed it in. "Mama says no circus." Kirk tapped the table twice. "No circus," he repeated, as if trying to write the words on his own bones. Back home, the kids' laughter filled the entryway, a relief and a challenge all at once. Their son clocked the energy instantly, glancing between parents like a referee in a silent game. "We ordered wings," he said, voice too casual. "You want?" Rasheeda kissed his cheek. "Maybe later." Kirk bumped his fist. A small code that said, "I'm here." They moved around each other in the kitchen, passing plates, dodging fragments of the past. Later, when the house quieted, Kirk pulled a small box from his jacket. Not a ring, not jewelry, something thinner. A chain with a tiny key attached. "What's that?" Rasheeda asked. "The key to my office drawer. We keep all the contracts there. The ones that caused half our fights." His voice flattened with truth. "I want you to hold it. I don't need secrets." She looked at the key a long time, then closed her fingers around it. "Trust ain't a gift," she said. "It's a job." He nodded. "Then I'll work." The night gathered itself. The city glowed. Their house, for once, didn't feel like a stage. They sat on the steps out back. A small ritual from before the world knew their business. Crickets stitched the silence. He said, "Remember when we couldn't afford takeout?" She laughed, the sound surprising her. "We ate cereal with pride." He grinned. "We still can." Laughed, the sound surprising her. "We ate cereal with pride." He grinned. "We still can." Her shoulder bumped his. "Don't push it." Her phone pinged again. A new DM, same faceless account as before. "If you want the truth, meet me." No cameras. Attached, a short audio clip, a man's voice, low, saying, "I'll be there in 20. Her heart rattled. It sounded like Kirk but blurred, like audio fed through a tunnel. She played it twice, then 3 times, eyes narrowing. She handed him the phone. He listened, jaw flexing. "That ain't me," he said, steady. "Someone's playing." She wanted to believe him. She also wanted to never be a fool again. "So what do we do?" she asked. He took a breath. "We go together." The meeting spot was a small two-clean cafe on the east side. No crowd, just the hum of an espresso machine. They sat in a corner booth. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then a woman in a hoodie slid into the opposite seat without asking. Her voice was muffled, wary. I don't want trouble. Rasheeda's spine stiffened. Then why are you making it? The woman held up her phone. I work in a studio. A friend of a friend sells clips. People are deep-faking voices now. I heard yours in a folder. She looked at Kirk. His, too. She hit play on another file. It was Kirk promising hotel rooms, money lies. Her stomach turned, and then steadied because suddenly it was obvious. The cadence was off by hair. The breath between phrases wrong. A mimic of a life, stitched from headlines. The woman added, blogs pay for spice. I thought you should know. Rasheeda's hands shook. She didn't know whether to say thank you or call security. In the end, she slid a card across the table. Send me everything. And tell your friend the next time they try to sell my life back to me, they better pray I'm in a forgiving mood. The woman took the card and left as quickly as she'd arrived. Outside, the air felt thinner. Kirk stood very still. They really cloning voices now, he said, half to himself, half to the sky. People will swallow anything that feeds what they already want to believe. Rasheeda answered. She looked over, and some people will help them eat. They didn't touch, but they walked shoulder to the car. Like two soldiers who'd just made it out of the same small war. On the ride home, a strange calm settled. For once, the villain wasn't the easiest guess. Not a mistress, not a producer, not even their own history. It was the fog that fame blew over everything. The blur between show and truth. Rasheeda leaned back against the headrest and watched city lights smear into lines. You know what I want, she said. I want a small life that still feels big to us. Kirk nodded, eyes on the road. I want to make noise only in the rooms that matter. A few seconds later, he added, I want to be a husband who don't need forgiveness, like rent. They pulled into the driveway. Before they got out, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled a folded paper. One more thing. She frowned. What now? He unfolded it and handed it to her. It was a list, messy, handwritten. No grand gestures, just tasks. Fix the upstairs sink. Schedule date nights. Take her mom to brunch. Family therapy twice a month. No night shoots during school week. Phone in the basket after 9. Every item was small, but together, they felt like a blueprint. Her lips twitched. You made a chore chart for our marriage. He shrugged, suddenly shy. Maybe if I treat love like work I respect, I'll do better at it. She ran a finger down the page. This is ordinary, she said quietly. That's the point, he replied. Ordinary is where I stop losing you. Inside, the house seemed to exhale with them. She set the key on the entry table. He hung his jacket. There was no applause, no sweeping music cue, just to people who had once loved loudly learning to love softly. She turned to him, not fully smiling, not fully frowning. We not healed, she warned. I know, he said. We not posting, she added. I know, he repeated. We not inviting the world in. His voice got lower. I know. Then she did something small, yet seismic. She reached for his hand, not to hold it like a movie still, but to rest her fingers against his knuckles as they walked down the hall. In the bedroom doorway, she paused. There's one more thing, she said. He waited. If this becomes content. If the phone starts ringing and you start thinking about scenes before you think about me, I'm gone. He swallowed. Heard. No. You need to feel it. She stepped closer. I'm done being the cliffhanger. He inhaled, like the truth had weight. No more cliffhangers, he said. Just chapters we actually live. Good, she whispered. Later, when she finally drifted toward sleep, her phone buzzed one last time. Carly again. You sure I can't book the dinner? The fans want to see this. Rasheeda stared at the message, then typed one word back. No. She set the phone on the nightstand, turned it face down, and for the first time in months, turned off her notifications. Kirk lay beside her, eyes open, staring at the ceiling like it held a map of every wrong turn he'd ever taken. He reached over, not to pull her close, but to place his palm on the mattress between them. A quiet promise, and I'm here, that didn't need more. In the dim, with the city murmuring beyond their windows, they didn't try to solve 10 years in one night. They didn't stage a miracle. They didn't fix it with a caption. They let the house be a house, and the bed be a bed, and the world be outside for once. And somewhere between midnight and morning. As Atlanta breathed and the phones stayed dark, their story didn't end or begin. It simply kept going, less like a trending topic and more like a life. And that, more than anything, felt like the first true twist. Around 7 the next morning, light crawled across the blinds and the quiet turned real again. Kirk was already up, sitting on the porch steps with a mug half empty, and his thoughts loud enough to fill the yard. The air was cool, That kind of Atlanta morning where everything smells like wet wood and new starts. Behind him, the door creaked, and Rasheeda stepped out in a robe, hair tied, phone in hand. She didn't speak at first, just watched him. The man who had once been her reason and her ruin. He turned slightly. "You sleep?" "Barely," she said, sitting beside him. "You same." They sat there, quiet, listening to the hum of a city already awake. The night before had ended without a fight, which felt strange. Most of their endings had noise. This one had space. Rasheeda scrolled through her notifications. A few texts from Yandi, one from Erica Mena, and a missed call from Mona. She locked the screen. "They are already spinning it," she said. Kirk looked over. "Let them, we got the truth." She smiled. Tired. "Truth, don't trend." Inside, the kids clattered around, getting ready for school. Their son shouted, "Dad, my hoodie." Kirk stood, grabbed it from the chair, and tossed it over with a grin. That simple small reel pulled something inside her loose. For the first time in a long time, the moment didn't feel performed. It just was. When the door finally closed behind the kids, Kirk leaned against the counter. "You think we can start over?" he asked. "Not like pretend start, I mean real." Rasheeda poured herself juice, eyes on the glass. "Start over means no reruns," she said. "We don't get to go viral every time we forgive." He nodded slowly. "Good. I don't want viral, I want quiet." Her phone buzzed again, this time a video link from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but curiosity won. It opened to a clip of Kirk at Frost Bistro, laughing with someone across the table. At first glance it looked intimate, the way the light hit, the way the woman leaned in. Rasheeda's stomach dropped until the camera shifted just enough to reveal the other side of the booth. A group of people. Plates, drinks, laughter. A dinner party? Still, she felt her body tense. People love twisting peace into problems. Kirk muttered. "Who sent it?" "No name," she said. "Just the video." He reached for her phone, but she held it back. "Nah," she said. "If they wanted attention, they not getting it." She deleted it. Simple and final. Kirk blinked, surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah, not everything deserves reaction." The rest of the day passed in pieces arounds, calls, small talk that felt like practice. Every hour, another blog dropped a theory. The Frost's back for ratings. Rasheeda forgiving for business. Kirk's secret plan. She didn't respond. He didn't either. It almost felt like healing. That night though, the quiet cracked again. A producer called, "You two trending top 5. The fans begging for closure footage." Kirk muted the phone and looked at her. "You want to do it?" "What do you want?" she asked. He hesitated. "I want to show people what real looks like. Not pretty, just real. Then we do it our way," she said. "No scripts, no fake storylines." He nodded. "Deal." 3 days later, cameras rolled at Frost Bistro. No extras, no glam teams. Just them, a couple of chairs, and a small crew. The director asked for a soft start. Kirk exhaled. "We've been through every version of us," he said, voice low. "The good, the bad, the ones that got headlines." Rasheeda added, "But this right here, this ain't about fans or forgiveness. It's about remembering who we were before all that." Fans flooded the comments when the teaser dropped. They glowing different. One wrote, "I don't know if it's love or lessons, but it's powerful." Another said. The views spiked fast, and suddenly everyone was calling it the reunion that healed Atlanta, but behind the calm eyes and slow smiles, both of them knew healing didn't happen in one taping. It happened in the space between takes, when the crew packed up, and the world stopped watching. After the shoot, Rasheeda walked outside first, standing under the warm night air. Kirk joined her, hands under the warm night air. Kirk joined her, hands in. Practiced anymore, it was real. Around sunset, she got a text from Yandi. "Saw you two trending again. This time for staying low-key. Who would have thought quiet goes viral?" Rasheeda replied with a laughing emoji and nothing else. She didn't need to explain that she liked it better this way, the stillness after years of public storms. That night, Kirk came home carrying takeout instead of drama. They ate on the porch, city lights blinking in the distance. "Remember when we thought success meant everyone had to see us?" she said. "Yeah," he answered. "Now it mean nobody need to." She nodded slowly. Funny, how love grows better in shadows. They talked long into the night about the kids. About maybe taking a trip with no phones. About opening a youth center one day. Something far from cameras. When the moon climbed high, Rasheeda rested her head on his shoulder. "You think people ever stop waiting for us to mess up?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but we stopped performing it." Before bed, she walked past the album again and noticed one more thing tucked beneath the last page, a second note, printed on the same paper as the first, but this one clearly new. Stories end where peace begins. No signature. She showed it to Kirk. Somebody got a poetic streak, he said. Or maybe it's just life finally saying enough. They turned out the lights, leaving the house in quiet darkness. For the first time in years, neither of them reached for their phones before sleeping. No captions, no proof, no audience. Just the steady rhythm of two people breathing under the same roof. Outside, Atlanta moved on to its next rumor. Inside, the Frost house stayed still, wrapped in something simple and sacred, love that finally stopped performing and just decided to live. The following weekend brought that strange kind of calm that used to make Rasheeda uneasy. No alarms, no interviews, no sudden notifications shaking the morning quiet. She lay in bed a moment, watching light stretch across the curtains. Hearing Kirk in the hallway talking low to their son about homework, she smiled faintly, that half smile that comes from realizing peace can feel unfamiliar. In the kitchen, the table was already set. Kirk poured coffee, trying to hum a tune he kept forgetting halfway through. "You off today?" he asked. "Thinking about it," she said, slipping into a seat. "Maybe we all need a day with no plans." He nodded. A Sabbath for the overworked. After breakfast they drove aimlessly through Atlanta, windows down, radio soft. Nobody recognized them. Nobody cared. At a red light, Rasheeda glanced out at a mural of two dancers painted on a brick wall. "Remember when we were them?" she said. "Always performing, never resting." Kirk laughed. "Yeah, I used to think love needed an audience." She turned to him. Maybe it just needed a pause. They stopped at Piedmont Park, walked the trail like strangers rediscovering each other. He told her about a business idea, music mentoring for kids who couldn't afford studio time. She listened, really listened, and said, "That's the first dream you mentioned that didn't have you at the center." He grinned. "Guess I'm growing." She squeezed his hand once, a quiet acknowledgement. By late afternoon, clouds thickened, gray and heavy. Thunder rolled somewhere far off. They made it back home just as rain started. Kirk lit a few candles when the power flickered, and soon the living room glowed soft and gold. "Rain again," she said. "It always rains when we talk real." He chuckled. "Maybe that's our soundtrack." They sat close on the couch, the photo album still open on the coffee table. He pointed to one picture, her laughing in a studio, hair wild, eyes bright. "You look free there," he said. "I was," she answered. "We both were." Silence settled, gentle but thick. He finally said, "We can find that again." She nodded slowly. "Only if we stop trying to rewrite what's already learned." Her phone buzzed once, lighting up the dark. She glanced at it, then turned it over without reading. "Nothing worth ruining the moment," she said. Kirk smiled, proud. "Look at us, ignoring the noise." "We finally learned too," she replied. They talked about small things, next what to cook tomorrow. Maybe inviting friends over. Maybe taking that long-delayed trip to Puerto Rico. The kind of talk that used to sound boring but now felt like proof they were alive and still moving forward. Sometime near midnight, when the rain had slowed to a whisper, Rasheeda stood by the window and looked out at the city lights blurred by water. Kirk came up behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Remember what you said, no reruns." "I like that." She smiled at the glass. "Good, because I meant it." He leaned closer. "Then we make new episodes. No scripts." She laughed quietly. "No producers either." He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded note. "Found this cleaning the car." She unfolded it. It was a handwritten lyric sheet, one of the songs they'd started years ago and never finished. The chorus read, "We break, we mend, we build again." She traced the words with her finger. "You kept this." "Always," he said. "Figured one day we'd know how it ends." She looked up at him, eyes soft but clear. "Maybe it doesn't end. Maybe it just changes tempo." He kissed her forehead. "Then let's keep time." When they finally went to bed, the power was still out, but the silence felt full instead of empty. Thunder rolled one last time, far away, like applause fading at the end of a long show. The city slept. The Frost house glowed in candlelight, and for once, there was no act left to play, no caption to craft, no crowd to satisfy, just two voices breathing the same quiet promise into the dark. "We still won, always will be." Morning returned, gentle and unhurried. The storm had washed Atlanta clean, and a soft gold light spilled through the curtains. Rasheeda stirred first, feeling Kirk's arm draped across her waist, his breathing slow and even. For a while she didn't move. She listened to the hum of the fridge, the faint laughter of their son in another room, the quiet that felt like grace. She slipped out of bed and padded toward the kitchen, hair loose, feet bare on cool tile. The house smelled like rain and coffee. She poured a cup, leaned against the counter, and let herself think about everything, the posts, the chaos, The old heartbreaks that had once felt endless, now they seemed far away, like a movie she had finally walked out of. Kirk came in a few minutes later, hair still messy, voice rough from sleep. "You look peaceful," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Don't jinx it," she teased, smiling into her mug. "We'll call it temporary peace." He nodded. Temporary's better than fake forever. They sat at the table, the morning light turning everything soft. For once, neither felt like rushing. "We've been quiet 2 weeks," Kirk said. "You miss the noise yet?" She shook her head. "I don't even miss my phone." He laughed. "That's growth." He looked at her, then really looked. "You happy?" She thought for a moment. "Yeah," she said slowly. "Not the kind of happy that screams. The kind that hums." "Good," he said, relief flickering across his face. "Because I've been thinking about what's next." "Next," she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Not drama next," he said quickly. "Legacy next." She smiled faintly. "Big word, Kirk." "Yeah," he said, rubbing his hands together. "But I mean it. The Frost legacy. Something our kids can be proud of. Maybe a foundation. Maybe a mentorship thing. Maybe something that says we grew up too." She leaned back, studying him. "You serious?" "Dead serious. I don't want to be the guy who only made headlines for mistakes. I want to build something that lasts longer than gossip." She let the words settle. He was older now, softer in the right ways. Maybe he finally meant it. "Then start," she said. "No posts, no press release. Just start." He nodded, eyes bright. "You in?" She smiled. "You don't do legacy alone." The next few days moved different. Kirk started calling old contacts, not for business but for help, mentors, counselors, educators. Rasheeda met with her boutique staff about sponsoring local youth events. It wasn't glamorous. It was real. But the world, predictably, noticed anyway. Headlines popped up again. The Frosts reinvent themselves. From scandal to service. People debated motives, as they always did. Kirk showed her the first one, waiting for her reaction. She read it, then shrugged. "Let them write. We'll live." Weeks passed. Atlanta moved to spring. Streets blooming with color again. Their family dinners became routine. Laughter louder than phones. One night, Kirk scrolled through old photos and landed on the patio picture. The caption, "We still won. Always will be." He stared at it for a long moment before turning the phone off. "You know," he said softly, "that line hit different now." "How so?" she asked, glancing up from her book. "Back then it was something I said to convince you. Now it's something I understand." She smiled at that. "Maybe that's what growing up looks like, understanding what you used to only say." They went quiet again. The good kind of quiet that fills a room instead of emptying it. Later, as night stretched over the city, Kirk walked outside and stood under the porch light. The yard smelled like wet grass and jasmine. Rasheeda joined him, slipping her hand into his. They didn't speak for a while. Atlanta glittered below them, alive and restless, but the Frost house stayed still. She turned to him finally, voice soft but certain. "You think this is it? Peace?" He smiled. "Peace ain't something you find. It's something you keep choosing." She looked at him a long. "Peace ain't something you find. It's something you keep choosing." She looked at him a long moment, then nodded. "Then let's keep choosing." And so they did. The next morning came, just like every other, full of light and laughter, and quiet decisions to keep walking side by side. No breaking news, no new leaks, no captions, just a love that had been tested, bruised, and finally. When Rasheeda passed the photo album on the table, she paused, tracing the edge with her fingers. She thought of everything they'd survived and everything they'd still face. Then she whispered to herself, just loud enough for the house to hear, "We still won." And somewhere behind her, Kirk answered from the kitchen, "Always will be." Evening crept in with a faint orange glow spilling through the windows. The Frost house buzzed with small sounds, cutlery clinking, music low in the background. The kind of noise that once used to feel ordinary but now felt earned. Rasheeda stood by the stove, stirring sauce, while Kirk flipped through his notes at the table. No managers, no crew, no phone calls interrupting. Just the rhythm of home. He looked up after a while. "You realize this is the first time we've gone a month without somebody dragging us online?" She smirked. "Don't say that out loud. You'll jinx it." He laughed. "Nah. I think even the internet tired of us." She handed him a plate. "Good. Let them rest. We busy living." They ate on the porch again, warm breeze carrying the smell of the city. The streets shimmered with lights, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, short and low. "You ever miss the rush?" he asked suddenly. The rush of what? Being talked about, trending. That crazy attention. She thought for a second. "Used to. Now I like hearing myself think." He nodded slowly. "Me too." Then, after a pause, Sometimes I replay all the fights in my head, though, like I could have fixed them sooner. She reached over and brushed his arm. Stop looking backwards. We're not who we were. He smiled. Yeah, I finally see that. Their phones, silent on the table, blinked one's notification, lights faint in the dark. Neither of them moved to check. That small act, that refusal, felt like victory. Inside, the house glowed with dim lamplight. Their son peeked into the living room, grinning. Mom, Dad, you, too, okay. Rasheeda smiled. Yeah, baby, better than okay. He raised an eyebrow. So, no more drama. Kirk laughed. Not unless you start it. Their son rolled his eyes. Nah, I'm good. Y'all had enough for a lifetime. He walked away, and they both laughed until tears formed. Later, Kirk found an old camcorder in a drawer. The one they used to film behind-the-scenes clips back when everything they did was for the show. He turned it over in his hands. Remember this? She nodded. That thing caught too many fights. He smiled faintly. Maybe we use it for something better this time. Like what? Home videos. Birthdays. Us cooking. Real life. She looked at him, curious. No uploads. No uploads, he promised. He hit record for a few seconds. Rasheeda, rolling her eyes playfully, then laughing. This, the new era. She said. Yeah, he answered. The Frost legacy, and the sound of her laughter filled the room. Small but sure, and he lowered the camera. That's the shot I want to remember, he said. Later that night, while folding laundry, Rasheeda found another old relic, a necklace Kirk had given her years ago, tucked at the bottom of a drawer. She held it up under the light, the small pendant catching a faint shine. When Kirk passed by, he paused. You kept that? She nodded. Even when I said I didn't. He took it gently from her hands, fastened it around her neck. Fits the same, maybe better, she said quietly. They stood in front of the mirror for a moment, their reflections older, calmer, but somehow closer than before. Kirk wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. You think people ever get tired of second chances? He asked. She shook her head. No, if the heart still beats, it still wants one. Outside, the city was loud again, music from cars, laughter spilling from porches, the pulse of Atlanta alive as ever. But inside the Frost house, it was steady, soft, and true. No chaos, no stage lights, just the sound of two people who had learned the hardest way that love isn't about the moments everyone sees. It's about the quiet ones no one ever will. When they finally turned off the lights, Kirk reached for her hand in the dark. You know what I'm thinking, he whispered. That we made it, she guessed. Nah, he said, voice low and certain. That we still making it? Rasheeda smiled, eyes closed. Good, I like that version better. The city kept moving outside, but their world stayed still, a slow, steady beat of forgiveness, work, and the kind of love that no headline could ever capture. And as they drifted into sleep, the last words that hung in the quiet were the same ones that had carried them through everything. We still won, always will be. Morning light poured across the living room rug, soft and gold, making the dust in the air look like glitter. Rasheeda sat by the window, notebook open, pen tapping against the page. She'd been trying to write something for Dazan, open letter to herself, maybe, or just a quiet record of what survival sounded like when the noise stopped. Kirk walked in shirtless, half awake, rubbing his eyes. You journaling now? He teased. She smiled without looking up, trying to. It's weird, writing for nobody. He leaned against the doorframe. That's how you know it's real. The kettle clicked off, and the smell of coffee drifted through the room. She poured 2 mugs, handed him one, and said, Remember when every morning felt like a battlefield? He chuckled. Yeah, back then peace felt suspicious. She nodded. Funny how calm can scare people more than chaos. They stepped outside onto the porch, watching the neighborhood wake up, dogs barking in the distance, kids riding bikes, a man jogging past with headphones. Normal life. I like this, Kirk said quietly. No cameras, no tension, just us. She sipped her coffee. You better. We fought too hard to earn it. Around noon, the mail came. Nothing unusual, bills, flyers, one thick envelope addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Frost. Rasheeda tore it open, curious. Inside was a handwritten letter from a young woman named Alyssa, a college student from South Carolina. It began, Dear Kirk and Rasheeda, I grew up watching y'all fight, forgive, and fight again. It sounds crazy, but it taught me that love ain't just highlight reels. It's work. Thank you for showing that. Rasheeda's eyes softened. Kirk took the letter, read it twice. She said we helped her believe people can change. He exhaled, smiling faintly. Guess all that mess wasn't for nothing. She leaned her head on his shoulder. It's strange being somebody's lesson. That evening, she framed the letter and hung it by the front door, quiet but visible. A reminder, she said, that healing means somebody somewhere saw you try. Later, as the sun dropped low, Kirk fired up the grill. Music played low, Marvin Gaye, smooth and warm. They talked about simple things, recipes, playlists, their son's science project. No tension, no subtext, just the rhythm of a couple learning to be ordinary again. After dinner, they sat outside while the sky turned violet. Kirk scrolled through his phone once, then set it down. I deleted half my contacts today, he said. Anybody who only called when things were falling apart. Rasheeda smiled. You really serious about peace? Yeah, he said. Chaos, too expensive. A breeze moved through the yard. She looked at him, eyes soft. You know what's funny? She said, we spent years building a brand out of drama, but the real story turned out to be the quiet. He grinned. Guess the plot twist is maturity. They laughed until it faded into silence again. A comfortable one this time. Stars blinked above them, faint but steady. So what now? Kirk asked. We just live. She nodded slowly. Yeah, we live, we build, we stay grateful. And when people ask what happened to the Frosts, we let them guess. He reached over, fingers brushing hers. No finale. No finale, she said softly. Just life. They sat there long after the music stopped, the porch light flickering against the dark. Inside the house, the framed letter caught the glow, a quiet reminder of everything they'd survived and everything still ahead. And as the night deepened, Rasheeda whispered the line that had followed them through every storm. This time, not as a promise, but as a truth already kept. We still won. Kirk smiled in the dark, voice low and sure. Always will be. Weeks drifted by without headlines. Atlanta moved through its heat, and the Frost house learned how to breathe in silence. Rasheeda spent her mornings opening the boutique early, sometimes before sunrise, just to sit in the stillness before customers came. She'd light a candle, write notes to herself, reminders like patience isn't weakness and love doesn't need witnesses. Across town, Kirk spent more hours at Frost Bistro than he had in years, not managing, not filming, just being present. He'd help in the kitchen, pay attention, listen more than he talked. The staff noticed. They whispered that the boss looked calmer now, like he'd finally made peace with something invisible. One afternoon, a local reporter stopped by the restaurant, not for gossip but to highlight small businesses. Kirk smiled, shook hands, posed for a photo. When they asked about his secret to longevity, he said, mistakes made me pay attention. That's all. It ran the next morning under the headline, Kirk Frost grows quieter, not smaller. Rasheeda saw the article over breakfast and laughed softly. Quiet but not small. She repeated. I like that. Kirk grinned. Might put it on a shirt. She repeated. I like that. Kirk grinned. Might put it on a shirt. She raised. Moment. Then nodded. Then let's keep choosing. And so they did. The next morning came, just like every other, full of light and laughter, and quiet decisions to keep walking side by side. No breaking news, no new leaks, no captions. Just a love that had been tested, bruised, and finally. When Rasheeda passed the photo album on the table, she paused, tracing the edge with her fingers. She thought of everything they'd survived and everything they'd still face. Then she whispered to herself, just loud enough for the house to hear, we still won. And somewhere behind her, Kirk answered from the kitchen, always will be. Evening crept in with a faint orange glow spilling through the windows. The Frost house buzzed with small sounds, cutlery clinking, music low in the background. The kind of noise that once used to feel ordinary but now felt earned. Rasheeda stood by the stove, stirring sauce, while Kirk flipped through his notes at the table. No managers, no crew, no phone calls interrupting. Just the rhythm of home. He looked up after a while. You realize this is the first time we've gone a month without somebody dragging us online. She smirked. Don't say that out loud. You'll jinx it. He laughed. Nah. I think even the internet tired of us. She handed him a plate. Good. Let them rest. We busy living. They ate on the porch again. Warm breeze carrying the smell of the city. The streets shimmered with lights. And somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, short and low. You ever miss the rush? He asked suddenly. The rush of what? Being talked about. Trending. That crazy attention. She thought for a second. Used to. Now I like hearing myself think. He nodded slowly. Me too. Then, after a pause, sometimes I replay all the fights in my head. Though, like I could have fixed them sooner. She reached over and brushed his arm. Stop looking backwards. We're not who we were. He smiled. Yeah, I finally see that. Their phones, silent on the table, blinked one's notification, lights faint in the dark. Neither of them moved to check. That small act, that refusal, felt like victory. Inside, The house glowed with dim lamplight. Their son peeked into the living room, grinning. Mom, Dad, you, too, okay? Rasheeda smiled. Yeah, baby, better than okay. He raised an eyebrow. So, no more drama. Kirk laughed. Not unless you start it. Their son rolled his eyes. Nah, I'm good. Y'all had enough for a lifetime. He walked away, and they both laughed until tears formed. Later, Kirk found an old camcorder in a drawer. The one they used to film behind-the-scenes clips back when everything they did was for the show. He turned it over in his hands. Remember this? She nodded. That thing caught too many fights. He smiled faintly. Maybe we use it for something better this time. Like what? Home videos. Birthdays. Us cooking. Real life. She looked at him, curious. No uploads. No uploads, he promised. He hit record for a few seconds. Rasheeda, rolling her eyes playfully, then laughing. This, the new era. She said. Yeah, he answered. The Frost legacy and the sound of her laughter filled the room. Small but sure, and he lowered the camera. That's the shot I want to remember, he said. Later that night, while folding laundry, Rasheeda found another old relic, a necklace Kirk had given her years ago, tucked at the bottom of a drawer. She held it up under the light, the small pendant catching a faint shine. When Kirk passed by, he paused. You kept that? She nodded. Even when I said I didn't. He took it gently from her hands, fastened it around her neck. Fits the same, maybe better, she said quietly. They stood in front of the mirror for a moment, their reflections older, calmer, but somehow closer than before. Kirk wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. You think people ever get tired of second chances? He asked. She shook her head. No, if the heart still beats, it still wants one. Outside, the city was loud again, music from cars, laughter spilling from porches, the pulse of Atlanta alive as ever. But inside the Frost house, it was steady, soft, and true. No chaos, no stage lights, just the sound of two people who had learned the hardest way that love isn't about the moments everyone sees. It's about the quiet ones no one ever will. When they finally turned off the lights, Kirk reached for her hand in the dark. You know what I'm thinking, he whispered. That we made it, she guessed. Nah, he said, voice low and certain. That we still making it? Rasheeda smiled, eyes closed. Good, I like that version better. The city kept moving outside, but their world stayed still, a slow, steady beat of forgiveness, work, and the kind of love that no headline could ever capture. And as they drifted into sleep, the last words that hung in the quiet were the same ones that had carried them through everything. We still won, always will be. Morning light poured across the living room rug, soft and gold, making the dust in the air look like glitter. Rasheeda sat by the window, notebook open, pen tapping against the page. She'd been trying to write something for Dizan, open letter to herself, maybe, or just a quiet record of what survival sounded like when the noise stopped. Kirk walked in shirtless, half awake, rubbing his eyes. You journaling now? He teased. She smiled without looking up, trying to. It's weird, writing for nobody. He leaned against the doorframe. That's how you know it's real. The kettle clicked off, and the smell of coffee drifted through the room. She poured 2 mugs, handed him one, and said, Remember when every morning felt like a battlefield? He chuckled. Yeah, back then peace felt suspicious. She nodded. Funny how calm can scare people more than chaos. They stepped outside onto the porch, watching the neighborhood wake up, dogs barking in the distance, kids riding bikes, a man jogging past with headphones. Normal life. I like this, Kirk said quietly. No cameras, no tension, just us. She sipped her coffee. You better. We fought too hard to earn it. Around noon, the mail came. Nothing unusual, bills, flyers, one thick envelope addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Frost. Rasheeda tore it open, curious. Inside was a handwritten letter from a young woman named Alyssa, a college student from South Carolina. It began, Dear Kirk and Rasheeda, I grew up watching y'all fight, forgive, and fight again. It sounds crazy, but it taught me that love ain't just highlight reels. It's work. Thank you for showing that. Rasheeda's eyes softened. Kirk took the letter, read it twice. She said we helped her believe people can change. He exhaled, smiling faintly. Guess all that mess wasn't for nothing. She leaned her head on his shoulder. It's strange being somebody's lesson. That evening, she framed the letter and hung it by the front door, quiet but visible. A reminder, she said, that healing means somebody somewhere saw you try. Later, as the sun dropped low, Kirk fired up the grill. Music played low, Marvin Gaye, smooth and warm. They talked about simple things, recipes, playlists, their son's science project. No tension, no subtext, just the rhythm of a couple learning to be ordinary again. After dinner, They sat outside while the sky turned violet. Kirk scrolled through his phone once, then set it down. I deleted half my contacts today, he said. Anybody who only called when things were falling apart. Rasheeda smiled. You really serious about peace? Yeah, he said. Chaos, too expensive. A breeze moved through the yard. She looked at him, eyes soft. You know what's funny? She said, we spent years building a brand out of drama, but the real story turned out to be the quiet. He grinned. Guess the plot twist is maturity. They laughed until it faded into silence again. A comfortable one this time. Stars blinked above them, faint but steady. So what now? Kirk asked. We just live. She nodded slowly. Yeah, we live, we build, we stay grateful. And when people ask what happened to the Frosts, we let them guess. He reached over, fingers brushing hers. No finale. No finale, she said softly. Just life. They sat there long after the music stopped, the porch light flickering against the dark. Inside the house, the framed letter caught the glow, a quiet reminder of everything they'd survived and everything still ahead. And as the night deepened, Rasheeda whispered the line that had followed them through every storm. This time, not as a promise, but as a truth already kept. We still won. Kirk smiled in the dark, voice low and sure. Always will be. Weeks drifted by without headlines. Atlanta moved through its heat, and the Frost house learned how to breathe in silence. Rasheeda spent her mornings opening the boutique early, sometimes before sunrise, just to sit in the stillness before customers came. She'd light a candle, write notes to herself, reminders like patience isn't weakness and love doesn't need witnesses. Across town, Kirk spent more hours at Frost Bistro than he had in years, not managing, not filming, just being present. He'd help in the kitchen, pay attention, listen more than he talked. The staff noticed. They whispered that the boss looked calmer now, like he'd finally made peace with something invisible. One afternoon, a local reporter stopped by the restaurant, not for gossip but to highlight small businesses. Kirk smiled, shook hands, posed for a photo. When they asked about his secret to longevity, he said, mistakes made me pay attention. That's all. It ran the next morning under the headline, Kirk Frost grows quieter, not smaller. Rasheeda saw the article over breakfast and laughed softly. Quiet but not small. She repeated. I like that. Kirk grinned. Might put it on a shirt. She repeated. I like that. Kirk grinned. Might put it on a shirt. She raised an eyebrow. Don't start branding peace. He held up his hands, laughing. Fair. Later that day, they met at the park for lunch, something they hadn't done in years. They spread out a blanket, brought sandwiches, and just watched people, kids running, couples arguing, life happening. Rasheeda leaned back on her elbows. Remember when we couldn't sit still for 10 minutes without checking phones? Kirk smiled, looking at the sky. Yeah, I remember thinking silence was punishment. She nodded. Now it feels like home. By evening, they returned to the house. Their son was sprawled on the couch, watching old music videos of Kirk's early career. You really wore that? He laughed, pointing at the screen. Kirk groaned. Man, that was fashion back then. Rasheeda joined in, shaking her head. No, that was delusion. The room filled with laughter, real and easy. After dinner, while cleaning up, Kirk found a small box near the back of a cabinet. What's this? He asked. Rasheeda frowned. Been years since I saw that. She opened it carefully. Inside were their old vow cards from their wedding, edges yellowed, handwriting faded. She read hers out loud, voice trembling slightly. I promise to love you through storms and sunshine, even when the world stops clapping. She looked up at him. Guess I meant it. Kirk pulled out his own card. I promise to find my way back, even if it takes forever. He exhaled, eyes soft. Guess I meant mine too. They placed the cards back in the box and set it on the mantel. No grand gestures, no tears, just quiet understanding. Later, as the night grew heavy, Rasheeda sat at her vanity brushing her hair. Kirk leaned in the doorway, watching her. You ever wonder what people will say about us years from now? He asked. She looked at him in the mirror. They'll say we were loud, messy, stubborn, and real. He smiled. Real sound good. She put down the brush and turned toward him. They'll also say we never quit. He nodded. We didn't. They walked to the window together, city lights flickering like fireflies below. Kirk rested a hand at the small of her back. You think peace lasts? He asked. No, she said softly. Peace isn't a place. It's a choice we keep making. Outside, a car passed, music fading into the distance. Inside, the house held steady. No shouting, no cameras, no scripts, just to people who had learned that love, after everything, didn't need to be perfect to be enough. Rasheeda turned off the lamp. Come on, she said quietly. We got tomorrow to keep choosing. Kirk smiled in the dark. Yeah, he said, reaching for her hand. And the day after that too. And as they walked down the hall toward the bedroom, the framed letter by the door caught the faint streetlight, the last line glowing softly in the dark. Thank you for showing that love can still grow after the storm. In the quiet that followed, their laughter trailed off, the house breathing with them. And somewhere between night and morning, with no cameras rolling, they lived the simplest truth of all. They were still one, and always would be. Summer rolled into Atlanta slow and heavy, the air thick with warmth and the smell of rain that never came. The Frost house, once the center of every rumor, now lived in quiet rhythms, laughter, silence, repeat. No cameras, no producers, no surprises. Even their neighbors had stopped whispering. The world had finally gotten used to the idea that Kirk and Rasheeda were still together and that nothing dramatic was happening anymore. One Saturday morning, Kirk stood in the driveway, washing his truck with music blasting from a small speaker. Rasheeda leaned on the porch rail, watching him dance terribly between scrubbing the tires. You really think you got moves? She called out, grinning. He turned, fake offended. What you mean? I invented moves. She laughed, shaking her head. You invented noise, and you fell in love with it. He shot back. She rolled her eyes, but her smile lingered. The years had softened the edge between them. They still teased, still argued, but now it was gentler, like a language only they understood. By noon, she joined him outside, helping rinse the car. Water splashed everywhere, and when Kirk flicked the hose at her, she gasped, grabbing the bucket and tossing it back at him. They both ended up soaked, laughing like kids who'd forgotten they were supposed to be serious adults. Their son filmed a few seconds from the window before they noticed, then ducked away giggling. Don't post that, Rasheeda shouted, laughing so hard she could barely stand. Later, they dried off in the kitchen, hair messy, clothes sticking to their skin. Kirk poured 2 glasses of lemonade, sliding one to her. You realize this is the most fun we've had sober before noon? She smirked. Growth looks good on you. The afternoon drifted quiet. Rasheeda went to her boutique to restock, leaving Kirk at the restaurant for a few hours. Around 5, he got a call, a no number, soft voice on the other end. Mr. Frost, this is Jada. I'm calling from Atlanta Community Center. We wanted to confirm your attendance for Monday's mentorship event. We heard you've been helping local kids with studio access. Kirk smiled. Yeah, I'll be there. When he hung up, he sat for a while, staring at his reflection in the bar mirror. The same face that had once been all over gossip blogs now looked calm, older, lighter. He thought about how much of his life he'd spent chasing spotlight, and how little he'd needed it after all. Back home, Rasheeda found an old shoebox of photos she'd never shared behind the scenes, snapshots, road trips, family birthdays. She spread them across the living room floor, each one a tiny time capsule. When Kirk came in later that night, she looked up. You remember this one? She asked, holding up a picture of them in their first apartment, surrounded by half-open boxes and takeout containers. He smiled instantly. Yeah, the day the stove broke and we ate cereal for dinner, we thought we were struggling. She said. We were, he laughed, but it was ours. They spent hours flipping through memories. No narration, no overthinking, just quiet smiles, soft laughter, the occasional tear. Every picture was proof that their story had always been bigger than the noise. As midnight came, Rasheeda gathered the photos into a neat pile. You think we'll ever forget all this? She asked. No, Kirk said, shaking his head, but I think one day it'll stop hurting. She nodded. That's enough. Before bed, she checked her phone for the first time all day. A flood of unread messages, brands, blogs, producers all asking the same thing. Will the Frosts ever return to reality TV? She stared at the screen for a long second, then typed one short reply to all of them. Reality finally started at home. She hit send and turned the phone face down. In the dark, Kirk's hand found hers. You done fighting ghosts? He asked softly. Yeah, she whispered. They can haunt themselves now. The window was cracked open just enough for the night air to slip through. Atlanta's hum floated in cars. Laughter, cricket sand inside. Everything else was still. When Kirk finally spoke again, his voice was quiet but steady. You know, I used to think love was loud. And now, she murmured, now I think it's this. Just you, me, the sound of nothing falling apart. She smiled in the dark. Then I guess we made it. He squeezed her hand once. We did. Outside, the moon hung low over the city that had watched them break and rebuild too many times to count. And for the first time in years, no one was watching. No one was speculating, just two people breathing in peace that didn't need to be proven. Their story didn't end in fireworks or headlines. It ended in quiet, in love that no longer performed, in hearts that finally stopped running. And in that stillness, soft as a prayer, came the same words that had outlived every storm. We still won. Always will be. Autumn came slow. The air turned mild, the lights softer, and Atlanta felt like a city exhaling after years of holding its breath. Leaves began to gather along the frost driveway, and the old bistro sign flickered at night, more out of habit than necessity. Kirk stood outside one morning, broom in hand, sweeping the steps while the sun crept up over the rooftops. Rasheeda opened the front door and leaned against the frame, a mug of tea between her palms. "You cleaning before breakfast?" she asked, her voice still rough from sleep. He smiled without looking up, trying to stay ahead of the mess for once. "Miracle," she said softly. They went inside together, the smell of cinnamon from her tea drifting through the room. She turned on a playlist old R&B, quiet enough that it filled the silence but didn't crowd it. Kirk poured coffee and sat down opposite her. "You realize it's been almost a year since the post," he said. She tilted her head. "The we still won one." "Yeah, feels like 10. She smiled. "In a good way." He nodded. "Everybody thought we'd fall apart again." "We almost did," she reminded him. "But we didn't," he said, and that small victory carried more weight than any trophy. The doorbell rang around noon. Their son opened it, a courier, holding a thick envelope. Kirk signed for it, confused. Inside was a legal packet, a contract from the network. He skimmed the first page and sighed. "They want us back," he said. Rasheeda looked up from the kitchen island. "For what?" "New series. Something about redemption arcs." She laughed once. Sharp. "We already lived ours." "You sure?" he asked quietly. "It's good money." She studied him, eyes calm. "You really want to trade this piece for a check?" He didn't answer right away. He just ran his thumb over the contract's edge, feeling the paper cut of old temptation. Finally, he folded it once and dropped it in the trash. Paper cut of old temptation. Finally, he folded it once and dropped it in the trash. "Nah," he said. "I'm good." She smiled. That soft, proud smile that always found him when he made the right kind of choice. "That's growth," she said. "Growth don't pay bills though," he joked, but she saw through it. "Maybe not," she said, "but it keeps the lights on in your soul." They spent the rest of the day in simple chores, laundry, errands, cooking dinner side by side. The kind of domestic rhythm that used to feel impossible when everything between them was noise and ego. After the dishes were done, they sat outside on the porch again, the sky bruised with orange and gray. "You know what I've been thinking about," Kirk said. "What?" "How everybody used to say we were toxic." "They weren't wrong," she said. "True," he admitted, "but you can detox from anything if you fight for it long enough." She looked out at the street. "We did fight, but at some point, we just started choosing peace instead. That's the part nobody teaches you," he said. "How to stop swinging." A neighbor's child rode past on a scooter, waving as she went. Rasheeda waved back absently, lost in thought. "You ever think about leaving Atlanta?" she asked suddenly. "Where are we gonna go?" "Anywhere quieter," she said. "A place where nobody knows our history." He smiled faintly. "But Atlanta knows our love story too." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe that's worth staying for." The night fell calm, the streetlights humming low. Inside, the old camcorder Kirk had kept recorded nothing but background noise, the sound of laughter, plates clinking, the faint beat of a song playing through thin walls. It was ordinary life captured in grainy footage, and maybe that was the point. Before bed, Rasheeda wrote one last note in her journal. "Peace is not what you find after the storm. It's what you build when you stop expecting thunder." She closed the notebook, set it beside the framed letter by the door, and turned off the light. As she slid into bed, Kirk murmured, half asleep, "You still writing at night?" "Just keeping receipts of peace," she whispered. He smiled, eyes closed. "Frame those too." The house went still again, the same stillness that once felt foreign but now felt sacred. Outside, wind moved softly through the trees, carrying away the last traces of the old noise. And as sleep took them both, the same truth hummed quietly between their breaths. Steady as heartbeat and just as sure, they were still one, and always would be. And that, right there, is the truth behind the post that broke the internet. Not another scandal, not another scripted reunion, but something rare. Peace. After all the fights, the rumors, the years of headlines and heartbreak, Kirk and Rasheeda finally showed the world what love looks like when it stops performing and just decides to live. That single caption, "We still won, always will be," wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about two people who had survived every storm that fame, ego, and pain could throw at them, and somehow still came home to each other. You've watched every twist, every meltdown, every rumor unfold like a movie. You saw the tears, the interviews, the awkward silence when cameras caught too much. You saw the betrayal that played out in public, the shade from castmates, the whispers behind closed doors. And through it all, you kept watching because deep down, you wanted to see if love could really make it through the kind of damage that destroys most people. And somehow, against every odd, it did. What you just heard isn't a fairy tale. It's what happens when two people finally decide to grow up together instead of apart. It's what happens when the noise dies and the work begins, the long nights, the quiet apologies, the slow rebuilding of trust. It's what happens when forgiveness becomes louder than pride. And now it's your turn to ask yourself, do you still believe in that kind of love? The kind that's messy, imperfect, but real enough to survive 1,000 storms? Because that's the question this story leaves behind. It's not just about Kirk and Rasheeda anymore. It's about you. About anyone who's ever walked away too early or held on too long. It's about every heart that's ever been cracked but still beating. So if this story moved you, if it reminded you that healing doesn't have to be glamorous, that love doesn't have to be loud to be real, then hit that like button right now. Let the world know you were here for the truth, not just the gossip. Drop a comment and tell me what you believe. Can two people really come back from everything? Can a relationship that's been dragged, tested, and exposed still find peace? Or does peace only come when you finally walk away? I want to hear from you. Team reconciliation or team start fresh? Are you the kind of person who fights for what's broken? Or do you build something new from scratch? Tell your story in the comments, because one thing about this channel, we talk about the real side of love, not the edited one. And if you've been following the Frost saga from the very beginning, from the betrayals, the secret messages, the villa trips, the business feuds, all the way to this quiet ending, you know this isn't just a story about a couple. It's a mirror. It's about how public love can fall apart and still somehow bloom again behind closed doors. It's about what happens when two people stop trying to win the argument and start trying to win each other back. Some of y'all doubted they'd ever make it this far, and honestly, so did they. But maybe that's why this moment matters. Not because it's perfect, but because it's proof that love doesn't have to be. So before you scroll away, think about it. Think about the people you stopped calling, the apologies you never made, the messages you typed but never sent. Think about what would happen if you chose peace over pride, if you chose to listen instead of perform. That's what this story is about. Not forgiveness for show, but forgiveness for survival. And maybe that's the message Kirk and Rasheeda didn't even mean to send, but somehow did. That even after the cameras cut, after the rumors fade, after the applause ends, there's still life left in what looks broken. And maybe that's the part that matters most. Because love like this doesn't trend forever. It doesn't go viral every time it heals. It lives in small moments, in quiet kitchens, in shared laughter, in old photo albums that remind you why you ever tried in the first place. It lives in every time you choose to stay present instead of running back to the same old noise. So if you've been waiting for a sign, maybe this is it. Maybe this story found you at the exact time you needed to believe again, not in them, but in love itself. And if you want to see more stories like this, more real moments, more truth behind the glitter, make sure you're subscribed right now. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss what's next, because here, we don't just chase drama, we chase the stories that remind you what it means to feel. This channel isn't just about headlines, it's about humanity. It's about pulling back the curtain on the lives you thought you knew, and finding something deeper behind the chaos. And Kirk and Rasheeda, for all their mistakes, all their missteps, just showed us that even public love can find private peace. So hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it with someone who needs to see that it's never too late to start again. And in the comments, tell me your truth. What does we still one mean to you? Does it mean staying no matter what? Or does it mean learning to love better the next time around? Because in the end, it's not about whether you're Team Kirk or Team Rasheeda. It's about understanding that every love story, every heartbreak, every messy reunion carries a lesson. And this one, more than any, reminds us that peace isn't found in the spotlight. It's built in the shadows, one honest choice at a time. So as we close this chapter, remember this: no matter how much noise the world makes, love that's meant to stay will always find its way back home. And whether you're healing, rebuilding, or learning to start over, you deserve that kind of peace too. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling, and thank you for choosing stories that matter. Until next time, keep your heart open, keep your mind clear. And remember, sometimes the quietest endings are the ones that last the longest. This is your moment to decide what kind of love story you're writing. Don't just watch theirs, live yours. And if you believe in forgiveness, growth, and love that refuses to quit, Say it with me one last time in the comments. We still won. Always will be. Still won. Always will be.